industry has dismissed calls from the Scottish Government to decriminalise drugs for personal use. They say it would allow for drug addiction to be treated as a health issue rather than a criminal issue.
Scotland currently has the highest drug-related death rate in Europe. So would legislation help to fix the problem?
Joining us now, former detective Peter Bleksley and author and journalist Peter Hitchens. Peter Bleksley, you were part of Scotland Yard's drug-fighting team in the 1980s. Should all drugs stay illegal for personal use?
No, the exact opposite. In fact, all drugs should be legalised and regulated. Please never separate those words. I want to see the fourth biggest industry in the world, which is what the illegal drugs industry is. It's bigger than the textiles industry, and we're all wearing clothes today. I want to see this vast industry ripped from the vice-like grip of global organised crime, and the only way we can do it, or start to do it in our country, is by the complete legalisation and regulation of all drugs throughout the process.
Even heroin, even crack?
Yes, yes.
Cocaine?
Yes, well, of
Really?
course, crack was a derivative of cocaine.
Yeah.
It is a derivative of cocaine. And who invented crack? The criminals, the drug dealers,
To make it more
because they made it more addictive.
When you say regulated, do you mean sold in chemists as a prescription? I don't know. What's the regulation involved?
Absolutely. I want to see licensed, regulated retail outlets that will sell the drugs, and unlike drug dealers, they won't encourage you to take more, they won't want you to take a more addictive drug, they will issue you with advice, just like you get when you buy a box of Anodin or paracetamol, for example, and they will actually attempt to dissuade as opposed to...
You were on our programme last week criticising all these university-educated chief constables who've had all these liberal, wishy-washy ideas which are undermining policing. And you've gone all liberal and wishy-washy. Liberalising drugs, really?
This is legalising and regulating. Remember, regulating.
Okay.
If drugs were invented today, would we give them to criminals to deal and sell? No, of course we wouldn't.
Peter Hitchens, why do you think the former Metropolitan Police officer is wrong?
Many reasons. The first one being that putting something in the hands of cynical businessmen is not necessarily better than being in the hands of criminals. Cynical businessmen have things which criminals don't. They can advertise. They have access to high streets. They can openly sell on the internet. And we've just got through, or are getting through, the terrible era when cynical businessmen sold regulated cigarettes to millions of people with terrible results. And government was implicated in that because of the tax revenue they got from it, and it was a disaster. And we're just about beginning in the advanced countries of the world to get out of that.
Cigarette advertising
I didn't
is
interrupt
banned.
you, Mr. Bleksley.
Okay.
Do me the same.
1 minute, 1 minute.
Favour.
Yep.
If you simply get what Mr. Bleksley is calling for, you can see already that it doesn't work. It's been tried already in Canada and in several states of the United States. The supposed regulation and legalisation does not in any way get rid of the illegal market, which flourishes alongside it because the criminal gangs can still avoid the taxation, the regulation, and they do. It's demonstrably not true, and he shouldn't keep arguing for it in the knowledge that it's not true. It wouldn't make anything any better. On the contrary, if dangerous and damaging drugs, and marijuana particularly, is increasingly associated with lifelong incurable mental illness, are marketed and advertised in our society, more people will use them, more young people will use them. It will be a disaster. It's amazing what's happened to the police force of this country, that a former police officer can be offering arguments so deeply irresponsible and dangerous in a public place.
Well, that's quite the charge, Peter Bleksley. You're irresponsible even for advocating this argument.
I won't lose a wink of sleep over being called irresponsible by Peter Hitchens, trust me, OK? I'm dealing with some of the matters that he's raised, OK? In my world of legalised and regulated drugs, as long as the criminals can be beaten on three fronts, which is price, purity and availability, the illegal market will shrink to almost nothing, like it has done with illegal tobacco, for example. And as for advertising, well, of course, these drugs will not be in the hands of people that run expensive advertising campaigns. These drugs will not be advertised, just like cigarettes are not advertised.
Who says, as in one of the major legalisation campaigns in modern times in California, Proposition 64, which passed on a referendum, one of the key parts of Proposition 64 was the freedom to advertise. And this is what will happen. You will find, if we legalise in this country, these things will be advertised. They will find their way very quickly also into the hands of children in much greater quantities than they do now. If you aren't losing sleep over it now, you will lose sleep over it later, and it'll be a good thing too if you do.
Let's deal with the children aspect, if we may, OK?
Yeah,
Smoking numbers have been reduced because in primary schools, young children are educated away from smoking cigarettes. It would be my proposal, because so many billions of pounds would be raised through the selling of these drugs, because the demand for drugs is not going away. Over 1 million people admit to using drugs, and I'm sure the real figure is far greater than that. So many billions of pounds will be raised. The prison population will be dramatically reduced, and children could be educated about the dangers and perils of drugs in primary school.
Peter, let me put that question to you. As a parent, I'm very concerned about all of these things, obviously. When it comes to cigarettes and vapes, I know that at least there's rules around them. But when it comes to drugs, there are no rules around them. So you can't actually discuss that openly. Parents can't discuss it openly with their kids. If it was regulated, you could.
Can't they? I don't see why not. Half the problem with this call for decriminalisation and legalisation of drugs from the Scottish government is that it's already happened, not least in Scotland. And many of Scotland's drug problems, like those of this country, result from a 50-year campaign of de facto, slow-motion decriminalisation and legalisation of drugs. Anybody who seriously thinks that the police are going to come down hard on somebody for possession of drugs in this country isn't paying attention. You can't reach this studio without coming through a miasma of marijuana smoke. The whole city of London in summer stinks of marijuana because the police don't enforce the law.
Studio, do you mean out? You mean outside the studio?
I do mean outside the studio,
Yes.
though I have to say,
Literally
I would say one of the reasons why this subject is debated so often is I believe it's not unknown for people in the media to take drugs, and I think it's possibly one of the reasons why there's immense pressure group in the political and media worlds and in many other places too for this disastrous policy. The best form of education on this matter is the law. And in the civilised, free and law-governed countries, Japan and South Korea, the law is still used to prosecute and discourage the possession of drugs, which is the absolute key to law enforcement and the one which we've thrown away. And as a result, their drug problems are significantly lower than ours. It can be done. It should be done.
I'm so sorry. Peter Hitchens, Peter Bleksley, thanks very much indeed. We asked you on Twitter, is it time to decriminalise all drugs for personal use? 43% of you said yes, so 57% of you saying no.
That was before our debate, so it may have changed.
I know.
It will have changed enormously.
It may have changed.
Right.